What's up, guys? It's Taylor with Manual Builders, and we are here for part 2 of the hairdo theory. The hairdo theory is just this series that we're going right now to try and help you guys enhance your mindset and keep a growth mindset in this season of quarantine. And in part 2, I have a special guest. It is Tyler Boudreaux. He is a consultant with the Equip Group. Tyler, thanks for being on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be able to connect with Taylor again and help anybody that might tune in any way that I can.
Yeah, man. So I'm super excited. Tyler and I have known each other for a long time now, and I think we have both learned a good bit from each other. So Tyler, if you could just give everybody kind of the rundown, some history, some work history, personal history, whatever you got for them, just to kind of let them know who we're talking to today.
Yeah, well, like Taylor said, my name's Tyler Boudreaux, from New Iberia, Louisiana. And right out of college, I started as an intern in full-time ministry. And so for about the last 10 years or so, I've been in ministry, also have business experience, really with revitalizing business, kind of coming in, stabilize some things, and just look at what needs to get done. So I would say more so than anything, regardless of the maybe the industry changing, just working with people and getting to know people in different industries across, business or ministry. The cool thing about coaching and consulting is that the denominator that stays the same is people. People have to, we need people and people to grow no matter what we are doing. So full-time ministry, business, and now I have the opportunity to do coaching, both for personal and individuals and teams, but consulting organizations, businesses, churches, through basically any way to improve, become more excellent, become more efficient, become more effective. And it's really, I say, the common denominator of people, because every organization is different because people within it are different. So challenges are unique. And so we just really get excited at the Equip Group for coming in and seeing what the unique challenges are for the people involved and helping in any way that we can. So, yeah, I would say people experience more so than anything.
That's good, man. I think that's probably one of the many reasons that Tyler and I get along so well, is that we are both people. We love to talk to people and be around people. So Tyler's going to help us out a little bit today. I think the main thing that we want to start off with, Tyler, is personal growth. So people don't think about this a whole lot during regular seasons of their lives because we're always so busy and we're nonstop, and obviously we're always growing. But this is a season for us to be able to slow down, being that we're all at home. And what's a way for us to push ourselves to get better in this season?
Well, Taylor, I would say I would be wary of anybody that just comes flat out and says, do 1, 2, and 3. And the reason I say that, and probably the most helpful thing that I could say to anyone that's watching would be, you need to take some time to get to know yourself. And that might sound weird, but unless you really know who you are and you have some people around you that can be honest with you, because I've heard it said that the hardest type of awareness is self-awareness. Some people around you to kind of lead and guide you and help inform who you are and where maybe areas to grow personally would be best. I just recorded a little mini video called them 1 Minute Momentums this morning, and really just talking about the fact that, from developing a skill set, for example, oftentimes what we really end up doing is we end up investing in the areas that we're most excited about, or the areas that we really want to. And sometimes it's not even the areas that we need, or maybe the areas that would benefit the people around us in our life the most. And so I guess a weird way of saying it, or maybe a way that you wouldn't hear consistently, would be that I think personal growth should really start with getting to know yourself personally. I suggest there's different ways to do that. I've heard the acronym from Pastor Rick Warren that talks about SHAPE. And it's everything from understanding your personality to understanding your experiences in life, and you got to get a baseline as to where you're at and who you are to know what the next step should be. I give the example this morning in the video that I did that there was actually a season where the most practical skill set that I needed to develop was my understanding of accounting. Now, that is not the thing that would come up for most people, right? The thing that they're excited to invest in. And listen, I wasn't excited to invest in it either, but the seat that I was sitting in to oversee a budget, there was people that had been in that world, that realm, a lot longer than me. And to succeed in that role, and they were really counting on me, I had to dive in there and get to know some of these terms. Otherwise, I wasn't going to do it well. So I would say in personal growth, Taylor, it really just starts with understanding who you are and what you need. And maybe even understanding what your loved ones or your closest relationships or the people that you report to, where they need you to grow. That could be in your patience. That could be in a practical skill set. That could be in formal education. It could be a lot of different things. So instead of giving real specifics there, I would argue that it might be a good idea to take an Enneagram test or take some of these other tests so that you know where you're at and you know how you're wired to then determine where you should go. If anybody just says go here and they don't have an understanding of where you're at and what you're like, that can create busy work that's not actually helpful or what's needed the most. So I would say start there. Get to make sure you know yourself and confirm that with somebody else that knows you and loves you enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's good, man. I've heard somebody say before, they were talking about eustress, which is the healthy form of stress where you push yourself just outside of your comfort zone. I feel like everything that you're talking about, if you are comfortable in whatever you're doing, you're not growing yourself in this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a really good leader one time tell me that you want to be appropriately challenged. You know, if you're under challenged, then you're going to get bored, and you're not going to give it everything that you got. But if you're over challenged, you know, there's an aspect of it getting beyond bending, and you can break. You know, so you want to make sure that you're appropriately challenged. And appropriate challenge, by the way, it kind of depends on how you're wired. But being appropriately challenged is usually just a little bit more than you initially think that you can handle. Yeah. Because it does stretch us. You know, anything we know about resistance, ultimately, the appropriate amount of resistance will make you grow. And sometimes we're not self-aware enough to know what that balance and that margin looks like. So having key people that can speak to that's important too.
That's good. Well, since you mentioned resistance, what would be a good way for me to keep my health up in this season as opposed to, you know, binge watching something on Netflix with a bag of M&Ms? I'm not saying that's happened, but that's happened. So what's a way for me to not do that right now? What's some options for my health?
You know, from a mindset standpoint, Taylor, I mean, first off, I would say, you know, I do not claim to be the epitome of health. But I do think I've been around enough awesome people to really learn some principles that are important there. And, you know, in the same way that I was talking about personal growth, really starts with taking an inventory where you're at. You know, we, right now with the Equip group, one of the things we've been doing is filming a course that talks about three key areas of personal growth, health and wellness, and key relationships. But what we've encouraged everybody to do while we kind of talk through that content was take an inventory of where you're at. And I would say, if I were to give just one practical step for anybody that might be listening, it would be take an intake of some of the key areas. Like if you look at some of the statistics of what health experts say that we should take in daily water intake. Well, if you just look up that stat and compare it to how much you're currently taking, then there's steps to that, right? There's steps that you want to move towards. You may not go from 0 to 100 plus ounces, but if you know that you're at 0 and you want to appropriately challenge yourself, then maybe it's starting with X amount right when you first wake up in the morning and then working up to. I would say from a mindset standpoint, man, and this is something I've had to learn for myself just to make it sustainable, is depending on how you're wired, you either need to have people in your life that help push you, or you need to have people in your life that say, hey man, you need to give yourself some grace. You can't be perfect every single day. I'm the second one. I would look at taking intake 100 plus ounces, and I'm somewhere in the middle, and I'd say, oh man, tomorrow I got to get that amount. And it's incremental. People say that all the time when it comes to physical health, is that it can actually be damaging if you create some unrealistic goals to happen immediately, because then the reverse mind effect happens psychologically, and you just kind of double down on that unhealthy principle or habit, and then you just feel less motivated, like you can't make it happen. So I would say, in any of the areas of just looking at your physical activity, maybe it's how much sleep that you're getting and what's ideal, 7 to 9 hours based off of where you're at. Water intake, cardiovascular. You can look up what health experts say, what's ideal in those things. And I guarantee you, what you're not going to see anybody say is, what's ideal is to lose X amount of pounds, right? Well, the reason is because they don't know how much you weigh currently. I mean, maybe your health right now physical health has more to do, less to do with amount of weight and more to do about how much sleep you're getting. So there's so many things there to just look at when it comes to that. And Taylor, I would also encourage people, maybe now more than ever, that health is not just physical. Health is spiritual. Health is emotional. Health is mental. There's so many practices in leading up to this season and in it that I think have actually been more beneficial for me than just the physical side. For me, my goal in physical activity right now has been consistency. Let me just make sure I'm consistently doing something that I feel like has been good for my body. But I've had probably more goals mentally and emotionally in this season from health than I have physically. So don't neglect those areas, because you could be chiseled, and if you are incapacitated mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, well, you got maybe a fourth or a fifth of health really going for you. And overall, how healthy are you really, if that's the case? So something to think through.
I think definitely for everyone, it's going to be a little different. The season that we're in, we have 3 kids under 5, one of which is 12 weeks. So the amount of sleep that I'm getting is very, very minimal at this point. So I think for everybody, it's going to be a little different. But one thing that we can do is we're going to put Tyler's social media tags down at the bottom. And if you want to reach out, you want to get some good information from him, get some consulting, stuff like that, he'll be able to do that. But one thing, kind of as we wrap up, Tyler, you were talking about get some of the people around you that can either push you or pull you back whenever you need to have those people in your life. How exactly do we do that right now with this social distancing, stay at home? We don't know when it's going to change kind of deal. I mean, I know it's even difficult for us to connect, and we're doing it on a recorded video, so how do we do that?
Well, I would say, Taylor, one of the things as we were doing this course that we really had to think through from a key relationship standpoint is, if you're married, your key relationship is going to be your spouse. And then your key relationships after that are your kids. And then, there's different circles that expand with what those relationships look like. And it changes seasonally, honestly. It doesn't change with your family. If you have a family, that stays the same. You can't say it's not the season for my spouse. I don't suggest trying that. But I would say, Taylor, the most helpful thing I could say, I know we can't go too far into that in this podcast, is do not gloss over and skip the spouse and kids. You have one opportunity right now to focus on, and it needs to be those 2 things if you're married and you have children. I would argue that while there's a lot of things I could say about the other categories of life, whether it would be spiritual, financial, physical health, mental health, maybe a professional mentor. I've heard it said that those categories of life, you should look at it like a board of advisors and have a key person in each one that you can go to consistently. But that doesn't look the same for every category. You may not need to talk to the person in that financial seat every single week. That might be more of a monthly or quarterly thing. So you need to look at it that way. But if you have that board of advisors right, and you don't have the key relationships of your spouse and kids right, then I would argue you're not actually succeeding in the areas that matter the most, because there's a reason that I think the diagram mentally kind of goes from the closest and branches out. You don't want to have the fringe correct. And the reason I think that's so important, and even with what we're talking about here today, Taylor, is because whether you're doing personal growth goals or health and wellness goals, or whatever the case may be, like you just said, your wife's able to look at you and say, hey, guess what? 8 to 9 hours of sleep might not be ideal right now. Maybe right now it looks like a nap in the middle of the day more likely than getting 8 hours specifically. They know you better than anyone too, and they know the real you, not just who you want to be. And so it starts there and it works out.
That's good, man. That's real good. So if you want to, real quick, Tyler, tell us a little bit about the business and a little bit about what you do, what you can offer people, what you can offer companies, if that's something that they're interested in.
Yeah. So our business is the Equip Group, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's going to be / the Equip Group. It's a little bit different on LinkedIn, but really the services that we focus on, we're expanding some of those right now. When it comes to any type of organization, whether it be a business, a church, and we really pride ourselves in coming in and taking a look at, what do you say that your mission and vision is? We're not necessarily trying to change that. Some people have a great mission and vision already, and then walk all the way through to values, your staff, who you have on a team. There's been a couple businesses where we've seen people have thought, man, I need to fire some people and hire some people. And it actually is just people in the wrong seats on the bus. And so looking at all the way down from staff to the strategy of how that business best operates, into action plans, and then daily, tasks. We want to make sure that the mission and vision matches all the way through, and that you're building the company off of what you said you want to be known by, and kind of working from the top down. And it's so much better when you do that. So that's kind of the consulting side, with teams, systems, strategy. Regardless, we don't have to be an expert in your industry. You're the expert, and we can kind of just go through with a fine-tooth comb and see. And then on the coaching side, it's really taking some of those same leaders and helping them in some of the things we talked about today. Some of it could be business related, but some of it might just be in the personal life too. We can't compartmentalize everything, right? We're a part of a business. We have a family. We have other things going on in life, and you can't completely separate them all. So that's why we like coaching. Sometime in the summer, we're going to be starting a staffing piece with churches where we help them find the best candidates for certain roles, and then kind of work them through making sure you got the right people on the bus and helping them succeed. Because sometimes you get 5 of the best candidates. It's hard at that point to tell who's best. And so we've built a lot of systems and ways to do that. And then lastly, we're going to be having the Life Momentum course that we talked through some of the topics today. That's coming out in the summer as well. So go like us on Facebook. Our website is theequipgroup.com. You can stay up to date with any of these things that we've been talking about.
Good, man. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun.
Yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to Tyler, wants a little more information, feel free to follow the links that we're putting at the bottom of the screen, or you can just reach out to me directly and I'll get you in touch with him. So this is it for part 2 of the hairdo theory. Next week, I'm pretty excited. I have a CPA coming on, talk through a little finances, what we should be looking to do savings-wise. So that's next Thursday, and we will see you guys next week.